Welcome to the GTN show. On this week's show, we've got the fields announced for the PTO US Open, Zwift steps into the hardware game, and we've got all the race action, including from the first of the Super League series that happened in London this past weekend. As you can see this week, I'm flying solo. Mark's off on a much needed holiday and Heather is off on an adventure. More about that a little bit later in the show. But we're going to start the show with some of the stuff we've noticed on social media over the last week. Not too much this week. I was a bit distracted this past weekend, so I haven't been on social media. But I did see this. Henry Schumann actually had to pull out of the Super League triathlon. At the last minute, he had a bike crash and a pretty bad elbow and shoulder injury. He's had a pretty rough go of it. And yeah, as you can see, some tears. He is not a very happy guy. Apparently he is already on the mend and he is moving again, but it has put paid to his Super League season that he was hoping to do this whole month, and of course any other racing for probably the rest of the year. So that's pretty heartbreaking to see. Also noticed this, Sean Conway has done a triathlon around the whole of Wales. Now this is a pretty epic achievement. His triathlon across the whole of Wales was a 16-kilometre swim and then an 850-kilometre bike all the way down the west coast of Wales, and then a 275-kilometre run straight up through the border of England and Wales back to where he started. A pretty epic adventure, maybe one for our bucket list? I don't know about that. It's pretty crazy what he's done there. It was pretty much self-supported except for the swim. Obviously he had to be supported on that swim, and the rest of the way was self-supported. He just had bags on his bike and he carried his camping gear on the run and slept rough, as he called it. That's a proper adventure if you ask me. I think he had pretty good weather in Wales because it hasn't been raining very much, but other than that, still an epic adventure. Well done to Sean. Sean's Try Around Wales. I don't think I'm going to put that on my bucket list. And then one more thing we noticed on social media, and this is from Lionel Sanders. In case you didn't notice, it was pretty hard not to notice, but in June at the 70.3 Mont Tremblant, Lionel Sanders knocked out his own tooth. Yeah, and he's been sporting a great big gap ever since, much to the enjoyment of the internet with their memes, etc. Well, he's got it fixed finally, and he has a new toothy grin. The internet was not that pleased with it though. A few people commented. The PTO actually said it's a sad day for triathlon. Phil Gaimon said, I was really hoping for gold. And Paul Felder said, no! So not everyone very happy with Lionel's new tooth, but it does look better than the big hole. Now it's time for your Tri News, and starting with some sad news. After 33 years of announcing for Ironman events, the Iron Voice, Mike Riley, has called it quits. Well, not yet. He's got a few more races to go, but he has been doing it for 33 years and he's done hundreds of events. He's actually called me across the line quite a few times and said, you are an Iron Man to me. He is now hanging up his boots at the end of the year, so to speak. So his final race will be Ironman New Zealand on December 10th, and it would actually be his 214th Ironman that he's announcing, not to mention all the other endurance events he's announced over the years. He announced his retirement, his imminent retirement, on Instagram earlier last week, and the whole triathlon world wishes him well in his post-retirement life. Also in the news this week, the PTO has announced their fields for the PTO US Open in Dallas, happening later this month. Now, the PTO US Open is going to be the final of the Opens for this year. This year they had the PTO Canadian Open, the Collins Cup, and now the PTO US Open. Of course, next year there'll be two more of those, the Asia and the European Opens, added to that calendar, so there'll be a total of 5 events. But this is the final one for this year. These events have $1 million prize purse, of course the Collins Cup having slightly more than that. And the fields are made up of the top 40 on the PTO World Rankings are invited, and then rolls down to the top 50 if it does roll down. And they add a few wild cards for, Olympic champions and such. So it's a pretty heady field, and this one's no different. So we've got a pretty strong lineup. On the women's side, Lucy Charles Barkley, who was passed over for the Collins Cup, coming back from injury, but She actually the following day went on the same course to win the World Triathlon Long Course World Champs in a pretty blistering time. Ashley Gentle, who won the PTO Canadian Open, is going to be there, and second place at the PTO Canadian Open, Paula Findlay, is also going to be there. Taylor Knibb, on her way back from injury, is also going to be there. And then there's a stacked field that carries on with Holly Lawrence, Fenella Langridge, Jackie Herring, Ruth Astle, Jocelyn McCauley, amongst a whole lot of others on the women's side. On the men's side, Magnus Ditlev, winner of Challenge Roth, is the highest ranked PTO athlete there. Also, Lionel Sanders, Alistair Brownlee, Daniel Backergaard, Florian Angert. On the representing America, Sam Long, Rudy Von Berg, Matt Hansen, Ben Canute, Jackson Laundry, Sam Ledlow is back, Frederick Funk. It's an absolutely stacked field. You get the idea. It's definitely going to be worth watching. Those races happen on the 17th and 18th of September, with the women going on the 17th and the men on the 18th. And there's also an age group race happening there, and the entries for that are still open until the 12th of September. So if you're interested in going and not just watching the PTO in Dallas, but actually racing it, head along there and enter right now. Moving on, an Estonian Rate Ratesep has set another world record. You may recognize that name. He did 60 Ironmans in 60 consecutive days last year in Fuerteventura, setting a world record in the process. Well, this time he's done 5 Ironmans in 5 days, which doesn't seem as impressive, except that he did all 5 of them in under 10 hours, giving him a total time of 49 hours and 32 minutes, which is a very impressive time for 5 Ironmans in a row. He did it in a competition in Switzerland called the Swiss Ultraman, or the Deca Ultraman, and it's actually part of a bigger competition. He broke the previous record that was held by Thorsten Eckert by more than 40 minutes and got under that magical 50-hour mark. His times were 9:53, 9:56, 9:51, 9:53, and 9:57 on day 5. And this is actually just a warm-up for him for his big challenge of the year, which is actually to run over all 8 of the Canary Islands in a row, going over the highest peak on each island, which will be over 700 kilometers of running with over 30,000 meters of elevation gain. So that's a pretty big challenge coming his way. He did all this as part of, like I said, the Swiss Ultra Deca World Champs. And now this is a 10 times Ironman race that happens in Switzerland. It hasn't happened since 2018, before the COVID pandemic, but they finally had it again. And this time there's 2 options. You can either do the continuous 10 Ironmans continuous in a row, finish the full distance of 2,260 kilometers, or you can do them as one Ironman every day for 10 days. So obviously Rate Ratesep did the first 5 days of that in a very impressive time, but the continuous variant did have quite a few takers actually. So the route is actually a lap course. They swim in an outdoor pool, swimming 38 kilometers non-stop, and then they go out onto a 9-kilometer bike lap, which they do 1,800 kilometers of cycling on, and then they do a 1.2 kilometer lap on which they run 422 kilometers, for a total of 10 times an Ironman. Now, the finishing time, just to give you some perspective, the winner was Kenneth Van Thun from Belgium, with Richard Young in second and Adrian Costera in third, and he did 182 hours and 43 minutes in total. His swim time was 12 hours and 42 minutes, and then a pretty leisurely 20-minute transition. Don't blame him for that. He then did 94 hours on the bike and 75 hours on the run, for a total of 182 hours. And then on the women's side, for the first time ever, a Vietnamese finished and won the women's race. 32-year-old Vu Pyong Tan finished in 328 hours and 27 minutes. These are mind-boggling numbers. There was only one other woman finisher, which was Nadine Zacharias, who finished a solid 11 hours behind her. Very impressive all the way around. That is definitely not something you will see me doing, either the 10 in 10 days or just 10 in a row. It's crazy. Now it's time for What the Tech, and Zwift has launched hardware. Until now, Zwift has just been a software company who provides the platform for which you to do your smart training on indoors, and now they're actually making the hardware to do that too. And the idea is to make it more accessible. And so they've launched what they're calling Zwift Hub. The CEO of Zwift says there's no doubt that Zwift Hub is going to disrupt the market, and we think it's great news for the customer. When we started our hardware journey, it was important that the hardware served the primary purpose of accessing and elevating the core game experience. Now, until now, you've had to buy a Wahoo Kicker or an Elite Turbo or something else like that has smart functionality. You connect it to Zwift and off you go. And that obviously means there's quite a lot of stuff you've got to get and choose from and everything else. And now Zwift is providing this out of the box essentially plan where you can get your Zwift Hub, which comes with a cassette included, and you can get Zwifting straight away as soon as it arrives. It's also very competitively priced at $499 or £449, and it's going to be available from October 3rd. You can pre-order now. What's interesting about this is that they say it's going to be whisper quiet. I'm not sure exactly how quiet, but they promise it's going to be one of the quietest turbos out there. I haven't actually seen it yet. Apparently, the boys next door at GTN are testing it out right now, so I might go and stick my head in there straight after we film this because I'm really curious to see what this is all about. And some more news from Zwift, because they have also upgraded their software. They now have a new feature called a holographic training partner. It's in beta at the moment, but it should be rolling out by the end of the year to everyone. And essentially, you're riding against a ghost version of your own session that you did before. Now, if you played Mario Kart in the 90s, you will know this as ghost files. Essentially, you could save your race, and then the next time you race, you could race against a ghost version of yourself doing exactly what you did in the previous race, and that's exactly what this is. Essentially, you can ride a route or a map in Zwift, and then you can save that, and the next time you ride, you can load your PB, and it will go along next to you as a ghost rider, and you can race against it, you can ride with it, or you can just drop behind it. You can't obviously draft off it, it's a ghost, but you can pace yourself off it. Who knows what other features they'll come up with this, because essentially you could send that file to one of your mates maybe, and they could race against you on the same platform. But that is in beta, and it is coming out soon. More software updates also include training camps, which will be with pro riders, the likes of Ineos, Movistar, Jumbo Visma, and Bike Exchange, and a new map of Wurukazi, which is an extension of Makuri Island, which should be live this winter. Also in What the Tech this week, also on stationary training platforms, Ruvi has announced integration with Strava, which means you can now, on their virtual reality, you can attack Strava KOMs. So you can attack the real life ones, or you can attack the Ruvi ones, but you can do KOMs in augmented reality, and there'll be live leaderboards. You can see the leaderboards, and you can obviously go for the KOMs yourself. And this is the first time something like this has been integrated on an indoor augmented reality app. So it's a new feature from them, integrating with Strava, which obviously has 100 million viewers, and the Ruvi platform, which has over 1 million users. So it's quite an interesting concept. We'll see if someone on virtual reality is taking your KOMs in your local area, even though they're on the other side of the world. I'm not sure that works. I think you have to just get a Ruvi KOM. You don't actually get a real world KOM.
Welcome to the race news. Now, I'm actually taking the first part as I'm here in Stockholm, Sweden, the day after the Otillo Swim Run World Championships. Now, yes, I took part, but you're going to hear more about that because we've got a whole video coming in it on the weekend. An absolutely incredible adventure. But being World Championships, we need to bring you the race news. Just to give you an insight into the race, it is 75 kilometers in total. So 65k of that is running, 10k of that is swimming over 24 separate islands. So 47 legs of swim run. An incredible race, and there were some absolutely incredible performances. In actual fact, we saw the world record smashed in every single category. So the men's, the women's, and the mixed team. So the men actually the event was won by the Arc Swim Run team, Hugo and Max. That's Max Anderson of Sweden and Hugo Tormento of France. And they did it in an incredible time of 7 hours, 59 seconds. I think they broke the record by about 40 minutes, and they won by 42 minutes. So just taking the sport to another level. The women's race was won by Helena Silverstone and Eureka Eriksson, both from Sweden, in a time of 8 hours, 35 minutes, 55 seconds. They were 15 minutes ahead of their closest rivals. And then the mixed team, this was a really incredible performance. The team Desi and Alex, so Alexander Berggren from Sweden and Desiree Anderson from Sweden. You might recognize the name Desiree Anderson. She's raced in the mixed as well. I mean, in the females in the past. Now, this is the first time that a mixed team has ever gone under 8 hours, and they did it by over 10 minutes. 7 hours, 49.54. And I just want to point out that they were only 1 minute off the men's podium. This is a mixed team, so an incredible performance there. And yeah, just truly inspirational. But anyway, back to the rest of the race news and James.
Okay, now it's time to wrap up some of the racing news that happened this past weekend. Starting with 70.3 Poznan in Poland. Didi Diedrichs won the women's race there with Anne Reichman in second, Lottie Lucas in third, and Britain's Susie Cheetham in fourth. On the men's side, Robert Willowiecki was the winner, Kasper Stepiniak was second, and Henrik Gusch was third. And then over in France, there was the Triathlon Girardmer, one of the famous ones on the calendar. Julie Deron from Switzerland took the win with Bob Riveros in second and Marjolaine Pierre from France in third. On the men's side, it was a French winner, Clément Mignon, taking the win ahead of Gregory Barnaby with James Teagle from the UK in third. And then we had the Super League London, the first in the Super League series, which happened this past weekend in London. So the first of the Super League series was a triple mix format. So they do a swim, bike, run for the first triathlon, then a very short break, and then a run, bike, swim for the second triathlon, and then with a cumulative time as a staggered start, a pursuit start as it were, they do a bike, swim, run for the final leg. And it threw up quite a lot of interesting permutations. There's also things like short shoots, and there were a couple of penalties which kept the racing interesting as if it wasn't interesting already. On the ladies' side, Cassandra Burgond, who was a very late entrant, she was swapped out for another athlete who had to pull out at the last minute, led out the first swim, and then she wasn't in the lead again until it really mattered, which was the last run leg of the last race, and she took the win, taking 15 points for her team. Taylor Spivey was in second there, with Georgia Taylor-Brown in third, Sophie Caldwell in fourth, and Beth Potter across that final line in fifth. On the men's side, Hayden Wild was the pre-race favourite, and it looked like it was going to go his way, but Matt Hauser was also up there trying to give him a run for his money. Unfortunately, what happened was an Eagle, one of the Eagles team members, had a false start at the first race, and so a penalty was handed out to the Eagles racers, and one of them was Matt Hauser, except he wasn't the one who did the false start. I believe it was Jamie Riddle. We've got a photo of him jumping off, and all the Eagles obviously wearing white kits, so you can't actually tell who it was. Matt Hauser was handled that penalty in that first race, and he obviously had to do a lot of chasing to get back on. It turned out afterwards on the replay that it wasn't him who did the false start. So that was pretty unlucky for him, but he did catch all the way back up, and it was a very tight race. In the end, though, it was Hayden Wild, and no one had an answer for his run legs. In the final run, he actually ran away with it, and he won for the Sharks with Matt Hauser in second and Alexei in third. Tyler Mistrchuk and Johnny Brownlee having a massive sprint finish for fourth place, with Tyler Mistrchuk taking the win ahead of the fourth place ahead of Johnny Brownlee. This race kicks off a frantic month of racing for the Super League fraternity, because next week they race in Munich, the following week they race in Malibu, and then 2 weeks after that they race in the first weekend of October in Toulouse in France, before having a 4-week break before the grand final, which is in Neom in Saudi Arabia. Google that. And one more piece of race news. Powerman Zofingen happened this past weekend, not triathlon, but duathlon, the long distance World Duathlon Championships, which happens over a 10-kilometer run, 150-kilometer bike, and a 30-kilometer run. And Switzerland's own Melanie Maurer took the win. She actually grew up on those roads right around the course. So coming home for her, and a great win. On the men's side, it was Frenchman Mathieu Burgot who took the world title there. Coming up this coming weekend, as far as racing goes, there's quite a lot of it this weekend, other than the Super League, obviously, in Munich, which I've already mentioned. There's also 70.3 Santa Cruz, 70.3 Sunshine Coast, and another 5 other 70.3s which don't have pro fields. There's also Ironman Wisconsin and Ironman Wales, and of course Challenge Almere in Amsterdam. Now it's time to take a look at some of the stuff you guys have sent in to us from your recent triathlon adventures. Remember, you can use the uploader that is on screen now to upload your own triathlon related content. Anything from your latest race or your latest training adventure, or just your latest adventure that is some tenuous attachment to triathlon. We'd love to see it and include it next week's show. So hit the uploader and send it in to us. This week we're starting with this one from Stephen. He sent us this photo. I assume it's of him exiting the water, and he says, I was competing in my first open water swim sprint triathlon. And that's all he says. So I have no idea how it went. Let's hope it went well. Let us know how it went, Stephen, or send us maybe a finish line photo too next week. Next we have this one from Andy Taylor, and he says, great event hosted by UK Triathlon with some seriously quick times. Really pleased with second in my age group in a time of 2:04. He sent us this photo of himself and also a few videos which are mostly just waiting and looking at the scenery while we wait for Andy to come by, followed by a brief sprint past of Andy with his wife, I assume it's his wife, shouting, come on Andy! Thanks for all those videos, Andy. Keep them coming, guys. Next one is from Dwayne in Vancouver, British Columbia, and he says, hi GCN, this weekend I completed the Ironman Canada race in Penticton, British Columbia. Thank you for everyone at GCN for sharing knowledge, experience and mistakes so that I could learn and have the best possible day. It is such an amazing journey that I cannot wait to get started for another. Well, we'll pass your message on to GCN. Maybe he meant GTN. I think he probably meant GTN. We'll forgive him this time. Maybe he wrote that too soon after he had finished his Ironman. And this one from Tony from Aberfeldy Scottish Middle Distance Championships. And he said, we took this team photo in the Aberfeldy Scottish National Champs and thought I might be good for an age group caption competition. Whilst the team are not pros yet, we did the M55 and female team relay. Well, I mean, that's not really how our caption competition photos work, but thanks for sending in. I'll have a go. She says, if I stick my bum out like this, do you think they'll use our photo for the caption competition? Let me know who I write to get my cap from you. Speaking of which, let's get on with the caption competition. Last week we had this image, which, well, I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But basically that whole day was ridiculous. Our eBay cheapest triathlon, you can watch that on the channel right now. It was pretty funny. Anyway, our captions are, Anna Dupont says, our new kit after paying for Kona. Reference to last week's discussion about how expensive Kona is, and yeah, that's one way to save money for Kona. Justin Hammer, along the same line, says the GTN presenters demonstrate how you can afford your trip to Kona. Well, if you start with a 45 quid bike, you probably will be able to go to Kona, but I'm not sure you actually finish the race. Not on my bike. Anyway, Josh Spencer says, the Collins Cup is proud to welcome Team USA. Ooh, burn. That's a bit close to the bone. Graham Butler too says, if the Breakfast Club was a triathlon movie, this would be the closing image. I like that. That's cool. Simon Granger says, Heather's first time without stabilizers just got weird. Yeah, indeed it did. And Rory C says, when we told her the maximum budget for all our triathlon equipment, Heather fell. See what you did there. Very clever, Rory. And finally, our winner today, Ivan Svechvik, says, why not join your local triathlon club if you want to take the sport seriously? ... The local triathlon club. We're not your local triathlon club, and don't take the sport seriously when you're around us. This week we have this image from Ironman Vichy of what I can only presume is a unicorn on the course. Did you see those on all the courses? I'm going to have a go and say, you're more likely to see a unicorn on this hill than you are to see a competitor actually running up it. Well, if you think you can do better, use the hashtag caption competition in the comments down below, and you could be winning a GTN cap next week. That's it for this week's show. Thank you for watching. If you're looking for something to watch right now, Mark did the Bog Snorkeling World Championships, and it is as ridiculous as it sounds. Don't forget to head over to the GTN shop where you can get all the merchandise, including the shirt I'm wearing right now. I mean, not my shirt, but a shirt like the one I am wearing right now, including all the other merchandise you see us wearing in all of our videos. And don't forget to like and subscribe to GTN so you never miss a video. And coming up this weekend, Heather, as I said at the beginning of the show, is off on an adventure. She is at the Otillo World Championships, and she is currently either running over an island or swimming between the islands. We're not actually sure which. We've been trying to track her, but she's on an island or between an island at the moment. Not really sure how that video is going to look because we're not really sure how Heather's day is going to go. But stay tuned to the channel because that's coming out later this week.